personally?
I think just the reminder of who Jesus is and the fullness of who he is and how that should affect the way I prioritize my life and conduct myself before him. It's just a good steel to chew on for a bit.
And we'll go on this way today. So I was encouraged tremendously, and particularly that part when you're talking about what does it matter, if we get this or we get that or accomplish this, we have a place on his block. So that was a great sort of perspective pulling piece of the sermon. It really helped me out personally. I appreciate that.
I was very much edified by the glory of God presented in your sermon, how big God is, how other he is in a really wonderful way, and therefore convicted at the same time. So,
yeah, I was encouraged just with a reminder of Christ is King. He came from heaven with a message, and so take these things seriously.
That was good, Theo. Similar to what these guys are saying, but just this idea of not getting used to our relationship with Jesus, that we forget his glory or his greatness, and forget to revere him. And that was probably like the main point of your sermon, and that was also the encouraging point for me.
And how it logically flowed in the end, like, if all these things are true, then why focus on the things that won't last? So it's a good encouragement and challenge to focus on what really matters.
So what could you have done what could have been improved upon, or what did you try that really didn't quite accomplish?
I think this is like one of those, I wasn't super happy with this sermon, and I think this could have done with like another, I don't know. I'm not sure if, like, I feel like it needed to cook a little bit longer, and I'm not sure if it's like I needed to sit with the passage more and I needed to get more out of it, or I needed to spend more time editing. But one of the two, something just didn't feel right when I was like putting it together, and like even preaching it. It felt kind of slim. So.
Okay. So you did have 10 minutes left, so you could have developed more. But I think even at the pace and the time, I think it was I think what could have made it more satisfying is that I got kind of lost with the tag for your third movement. The first movement was God deserves to be heard because of his higher position, as I understood it.
Yeah.
And then the second one, and that was verse 25. God deserves to be heard because of his high promises.
Yeah.
26, 27. And then 28 and 29, though you explained it, I didn't catch the transition.
Sure.
How it flowed with the rest of it. It's almost like you missed a page or something. And I think it could have been help right there, despite the time. You had more time to develop it, but even if you had stuck with that time, if you tightened up that transition, I think it would have been
that's fair.
a bit more effective.
So though I agree that Jesus is not our homeboy, I think that you didn't, but he is the friend of sinners. Mm-hmm. He is the friend who sticks closer than a brother.
Sure.
So we're always constantly dancing between his immanence and his transcendence. Sure. And I get that the emphasis here is transcendence, but if you neglect, and you hit it a couple times in, it's obviously his humiliation, that kind of stuff, but I would walking that fine line between transcendence and immanence, which Christ perfectly fulfills both, I think is hard, but something you could have probably done better.
Okay.
Because I walked out of there just kind of like, only reverence and like not a lot of sense of like I want to enjoy God. I just like I need to enjoy God, but I don't really necessarily want to from a deep place in my core.
Okay.
So trying to strike that immanence, transcendence, I'd say try to improve on.
Yeah, sticking with that, although I like that and went along with the tone of the passage and your point that Jesus is much more than this. He's the king. Just this idea of Jesus isn't your homeboy, but you also talked about that he got us a place on his block too. So
Yeah.
like this kind of like those illustrations a little bit kind of like work against one another. Even though I like that point that Jesus died to give me a place on the block,
Interesting.
he's not my homeboy.
Yeah.
So they're like too closely related.
And put that together.
Yeah. There's been.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because then it's like, oh, I am his homeboy.
Yeah.
I'm on his block.
There's been some like there was like experimentation with like
Yeah.
coloring in this. So.
But it's not to sacrifice the
Yeah.
big God theology, it's
Yeah.
both. And it
Yeah.
actually makes his glory all the greater.
Yeah.
It's also like, wow, he is the friend who sticks closer than a brother.
I might, yeah, that probably one more edit to like think through how all those things fit.
Yeah, I liked them separately.
Yeah.
They're just like, I feel like they're just too
Yeah.
closely related.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
I was gonna say that one point there, maybe 3/4 of the way through, then you were asking some good questions about, like you have Christ, what else do you need? Have you heard Christ and have you submitted to his lordship? And I think if you could have fleshed that out a little bit and maybe given some examples of what submitting to his lordship might look like for you and areas where we might struggle with that as church leaders, and it would have helped me get into those questions a little bit more.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fair.
So although you had pauses, it felt like when you were speaking, you were going at a pretty fast pace, like where I didn't have too much, like when you were speaking, it was going fast. And you're not speaking so I can write everything down. You're not. But like there's points where I was just like, oh, I can't even dwell on this because we're already moving to the next thing. And so just maybe, and you had 10 minutes, so I think slowing that down even while you were speaking, like the way you're speaking would have been helpful for your sermon in total too.
So the only other thing I had was, that hasn't been said, was I tracked with you the whole time, and I completely followed the argument, but I wasn't quite sure how to put your argument in a sentence, because at first I thought it was God deserves to be heard,
Yeah.
and then it was going to continue to flow from that, the higher position, the higher promises, the whatever, presence. I wasn't exactly sure if I got it right. And if you would maybe come back at the end and maybe
Okay.
just, because the argument, it wasn't that I was lost
Yeah.
at all.
Yeah.
I thought it was clear, but I think if you had come back at the conclusion and said, or sort of recapped what your main argument was, I think it would have been even more satisfying.
Okay.
So I missed your homiletical outline altogether,
Okay.
and so I also didn't catch it throughout because I didn't know what I was really trying to listen for.
Yeah.
That could have been on me, but yeah.
Okay.
Maybe just repeat on the main things a couple times to really signify that this is kind of my ultimates.
Yeah, I thought it was good when you're talking about the shaken, the removal of things of this world, and how you're talking about, hey, this was meant to encourage them, but then we kind of just moved on, but just like, how is this going to encourage them
Okay.
in their situation? And so then how is this encouraging to us?
I did catch your first point or two, and then I thought that it kind of got lost somewhere in there, like that last point. I was thinking maybe that second point just went till the end.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what you're doing, but then I was like, oh, maybe there was something on 28, 29.
I was like, the intent was for
Okay,
all
it
of
was
it
the
to be
whole
like the second point.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. So, yeah, then if going that way, maybe just make that clear.
Okay.
Just one little thing, I guess. I don't like going last. But anyways.
Get over it, man. Get over it, yeah.
I guess you focus really on the encouraging side of this
Okay.
passage, where
Yeah.
I think it begins actually with this very heavily warning part too, which I think you could have used a little bit more. And you focused on his high position there, why we should listen to him. But I feel like it's also like, yeah, because you're not gonna make it, you won't escape. So maybe it's the whole Hebrews thing. You gotta balance the warning and the encouragement side. Like there's a warning for endurance, and I think you focus a little bit too much on the endurance here, and you didn't bring in that warning part. So
what did you do well?
It's not my favorite sermon by any means, but
You can't say nothing.
with
you never got away with it.
I think I like tried to be a little bit more like free with my language, and I think some of it was like, I think some of that landed. So like the language of you know, you have a place on his block. Like I thought that was like, it was just a way for me to stretch because I wouldn't normally do that. So hit or miss. Yeah.
Well, I thought there was a lot of good things that you did, and one of them that I thought was good was actually the language, the diction, the word choice. You know, despite some of the things we've already said, I didn't sense, or I didn't hear any fat in your message. It was like every sentence like landed. So it's like the editing, and again, despite what we've already talked about in terms of that second and third point, or the second point that went into 28 and 29, despite the little editing that needs to be done there, I felt like the editing that you did do on the language was like right on the money. Because it felt very crisp and clean and like right on the money as it relates to the tone that was needed for the text.
Yeah, speaking of crisp, your intro was phenomenal. I mean, it was one of the crispest intros I've heard in a long time. Like, you didn't waste a single word. I knew exactly what you were doing. I knew I should be listening. And then we were into the text. I was like, all right, let's go. So if all your intros are like that, man, I mean, this is the first time I've heard you preach. So if that's the bar, that's pretty high. But that was great, and I think something that we all can learn from, just how quickly you made that point. And got us to the text. So well done there.
Cool, thanks.
Yeah, I mean, this is only the second sermon I've heard from you, but I thought this was your best. And I think a big thing was that intro. It was awesome. It was right spot on, and as you said, like, we should sit up and listen to God, and you kind of got us ready with your illustration and with the setup of the text. Good.
I like the tone, Theo. I thought it was matching this serious warning, and I liked too how you varied it a little bit, especially at first there you had something pretty serious, and then you got into your illustration, I think, with Mayor Lightfoot there, and you kind of came down so we could listen to you, and it was good. It was engaging.
Although, like, we're talking about the structure homiletically, I think I could still follow your logic clearly. You went, take Jesus seriously. Why? Because he is this, like, God who should be scared of, but that's a good thing. And what does that mean for us? Then we shouldn't focus on those things that could be burned up. And I could, like, I said all that, which was, I think, a lot of your sermon. So I think you were clear in how you moved through it with the logic. So that's really
Sweet.
hard to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
So, there were a few, you tried a whole lot of different things, and I think you connected with a whole lot of different things, meaning not just the word choice and the language, but you had a few flourishes, a few runs there where you, like, this part where you, I think it was in the first section when you were talking about how Jesus has come down, and then you made a comparison, contrast between Moses and Christ. Moses did this, but Christ. Moses, blah, 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 but Christ. Moses, but Christ. And it was really, and you did that in a couple other places where you sort of emphasized your point, but it wasn't through redundancy. It was sort of like it was a satisfying contrast or satisfying sort of run with words. And I thought was really helpful. I'm sorry, so go ahead.
Yeah. So I from this sermon, it seems like your default mode is like a slight intensity, which is fine. That's not bad. But when you did vary your tone, it created a lot of interest. Because I was like, oh, he's going somewhere a little different right now, and it caused me to press in. So that was good, and just I continue to vary tone, speed, volume. Especially when I think you got to illustrations, things that you felt like you knew better. You weren't reading. You were kind of felt like reading the crowd a little bit more, and yeah, it made it a lot. It was very interesting.
Yeah, although you said you maybe needed more time to prep and or edit, I thought you were like you knew what you were going to say. You knew what direction and like what you wanted us to be left with.
Right.
That Jesus is the King, and so this demands a certain response from us, and I think that landed on all of us.
Yeah.
I agree. I think your point was clear, and even your illustrations of that Lightfoot one, it just connected like right to that point. And I think it's I don't know if you kind of sound like you want to scrap that sermon, but I'd hang on to that one and consider working with it a little bit, because I think it's a message that the church needs to hear.
Cool.
Yeah, also in the beginning of your sermon, you used the context, and I think you used that very handedly to support what you were just moving right into, so you went from like intro, context to points, whatever. And I think, you did that smoothly, and like I was like, oh yeah, we're in this, so.
Yeah. You did something, if I may take a half of a moment. You did something that we talked about earlier today, that is, wherever you start, move to the other place quickly, and you did what I said is very hard to do, and that is, you led with a right. You came straight
That's true.
at it, and you landed it.
Yeah.
So that was a good example that it can be done. You did it economically. You hit squarely. It impacted us very profoundly and set up all the rest of your things. So it was easy to follow.
True.
And easy and satisfying as it relates to how it all landed. So good job.
Cool. Thanks.